Hello and welcome to the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast, where I am so excited to be joined here by one of my one-on-one coaching clients, Stephanie Prinzing, who recently ran the London Marathon and is here to share her story about becoming a runner, share all of her tips and advice and realities of traveling to run a world major. And, just really our goal here today is to share some of the logistics and some of the stuff that you might not think of and how to best plan and prepare for traveling to an out of town or out of country or out of continent race like so many of us are doing these days. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
All right. So first off, we need to hear your running origin story. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into running.
Sure. So I live in Rochester, New York, which a lot of people think Times Square, but it's more like an hour across the border to Canada. So different part of the state. And there is a lot of running and racing in my area. But I actually was not a very athletic person until about high school when my friend asked me to join the track team with her because she didn't know anybody. And I said, yeah, sure, okay. It's the only sport that you can do in high school typically that doesn't require some sort of background experience. So I was on the track team for a season. I actually didn't like it very much because the track meets are like 8 hours long and you do a 30-second race, but you have to be there all day. And I think that's why my dad is such a good marathon spectator today because he'd go to all my track meets. And so, yeah, didn't stick with that for very long. Rediscovered running in my 20s when my sister did a half marathon, had a great time with it, and said, like, oh, I think you'd actually enjoy doing a race. So I did one, and it became a very casual thing. Like maybe once a year, I'd pick up from scratch, do a race. I traveled a lot in my 20s, so it became a way to sort of see the city when I was in a new place. I didn't really stick with anything too long. I did a half marathon at one point and thought, oh, well, what if I just, stuck it out and did a full marathon after that? And that did not go like most people. I think, there were a lot of challenges in my first marathon, and I thought that was cool. I don't need to ever do that again. Stopped running again. And then picked it up in my 30s. I actually got into ice hockey for a while, did like a learn to play class as an adult, and got a really bad concussion that took me out from exercising for like 6 months. And while I was like laid up in bed, all I could think about was like, man, I really want to run again. And I feel like I didn't give the marathon a full shot. And so when I was cleared to run, I immediately signed up for the Paris Marathon because I was like, at that point hadn't traveled in a while. This was after the pandemic.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, right. And that actually was a much better experience than the one I did several years before. But yeah, I haven't stopped running since, and I did Paris, and then I did the Chicago Marathon, and then most recently the London Marathon. So three different times over my life, but I hope this is the final one that I keep going with.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that like your sort of that identity shift to like becoming a runner like came
Hmm.
out of a head injury. You know, like
Yeah.
that's an interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I even had like my running bucket list of like where are all the places I'm gonna run when I can run again.
Yeah.
And yeah, like yeah. So it's yeah, like you know what? If that's the one thing that I really wanted to do, like maybe that's the thing that I need to put more effort into and learn how to do well.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of that, I mean, you've had a lot of like experience, some of it on again, off again
Hmm.
experience with being a runner. You have experience with marathon running, experience doing halves, like you kind of done all the things. And so at this point, what was challenging you with your running and your nutrition that you were like, you know what, I think I really need to like reach out to someone and work with someone on all of this stuff and put all these pieces together?
Sure. I mean, I think that the thing that I just kept noticing was like I always just stopped as soon as I was done with a race, and then I would stop and pick it up maybe a year later. And so it's just like you're not making any progress doing that.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, and also, I was just kind of learning things from the internet. I was getting injured a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and just doing all the things that you're not supposed to do because no one ever told me how to do it the right way. I think all the time about like, man, if only I'd listened to my track coach, like I could be a much better runner
Yeah.
today just from learning how to do everything right. And I think a lot of people feel like you don't like I'm using air quotes here, you don't deserve a coach until you're at a certain level. But I think
Hmm. Hmm.
starting out knowing how to do everything right. Like, I mean, this is 20 years that I was just kind of, cobbling things together. Like, why wouldn't you just work with a coach and learn how to do things right? It's much easier to learn how to do it right the first way than to unlearn all your bad habits, which I had to do once I started working with you. And were very nice about showing me how to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think so. Wanting to do this London Marathon, I was like, okay, like I want to work with a coach. Like I don't want to get injured. I also, a couple health things came up last year that my doctor kind of just told me, like, oh, well, you should change your diet to this type of thing. And I didn't really know how to do that and still be a runner. And there's so much misinformation on the internet and so many different stories. And then you actually had a podcast about this specific type of diet and how it affects running. And I was like, I mean, I think I could benefit from a running coach, but I think what I really need is a dietitian. And then once I started working with you as a dietitian, I just realized how much fueling makes a difference in running, in recovery. And, yeah, like that kind of always felt like the missing piece for me was, I
Hmm.
kind of know what I'm supposed to do, but how do I eat enough and eat the right things to be able to do that?
For sure, for sure. And I like, a couple of things that you said I think are so common amongst runners is that it's like sign up for the race first, then start training,
Mhm.
and then getting injured along the way because you're going from like zero to having to ramp up your mileage really quickly. You're not running in between races. People often think that they need to always have a race on the calendar in order to stay motivated to run. And it kind of, yeah, like you said, you just don't get anywhere when that's your approach. Like you're going to wind up getting injured because you're always trying to do too much too soon. You're not
Mhm.
building on your fitness season after season. You're just letting it go in between. And there's a way to juggle other activities and there's a way to like ramp up and scale back your running without it being all or nothing and totally quitting in between.
Yeah, totally. And again, like if I had done it even 10 years earlier, I'd probably be in a very different situation with my running, like
Yeah.
working with you as a coach. Like this was the first time where I felt like, oh, like maybe I really could get to these goals that I'd like to eventually hit because I was
Hmm.
actually seeing that progress.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you prior to really being a runner, you were a traveler first and
Hmm.
foremost, and so it makes sense that those two things have kind of come together for you. But what inspires you or makes you want to travel for races specifically? Like, what is it about that really makes you want to plan all of these different destinations to go and run at?
Yeah, so I think that running is a really fun way to see a new place. And so, and it's also really cool. I was thinking about like I did the New York City half marathon a couple years ago, and they like shut down parts of the city that you normally can't walk through or run through. Like I ran across the Brooklyn Bridge. Like I would never do that just on vacation. Or,
Yeah.
you know, you run through Times Square. Like I don't even go to Times Square usually because it's just too many people, you know, and it's
Yeah.
just a very different experience. You know, the whole city comes out for a race and you get to see just like the different crowd support and all the signs that they have and what kind of things they hand out to help out the runners and the cheers. And so you really get it's like a whole different vibe than just going as a tourist.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so a couple of the races that I've run, sometimes it's just like, oh, I want to visit that city, and oh, it happens that there's a race on a weekend that I can go. Like that's kind of fun, and my family likes to come on the trip, and so we kind of do a two birds with one stone kind of thing where, you know, we go on a vacation, and then on one of the days, it's just like, all right, I gotta duck out and run this race.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I just think it's a really unique way to get to know where you're going, and even if it's not a race, like just going on a, you know, running through a park when you're visiting somewhere like a casual run or a park run like that. Yeah, you just get to really feel a different connection to where you are and
Yeah.
see some
Yeah.
things you might not see otherwise.
Well, for sure. And I think especially too when you're going to places like New York where they have so much pride in the events that they put on. Like
Hmm.
I always say, I've been talking to a lot of runners just recently who are starting to train for the New York full marathon this November. And I ran it last fall. And, of course, people, oh, how was it? Or like any advice or whatever. And it's like, well, you're going to have a blast. Like, you're just going to have an incredible time because there's such a culture around it being the best marathon in the world. Like, and so when you're going to places
Hmm.
that are so welcoming and so inviting, and the people that live there are so excited for the event, and there's that like community support right there, I think it really like it just brings everybody together in such a cool way that if, yeah, you're just a tourist, it's it's not quite the same experience, I think, of being in
Hmm.
that city. People find out you're there for the marathon. It's like, oh, awesome, welcome, we're so glad you're here.
Oh yeah, there were so many people, you know, and then you wear your medal around and random people
Yes.
on the street are like, "Hey, great job. How was the race?" And you
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's like a very different type of camaraderie where normally, you know, realistically people are like, "Ugh, tourists, like get out of my way." But they're like, "Oh,
Right.
tourists for the race," you know, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and you just, yeah, the people you meet along the way are very you know, you hear all the interesting stories and, you know, what made you come here for this and
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Yeah, it's very cool. So we kind of answered this already, but are there any other sort of favorite parts about traveling to a new city for a race? So as much fun and excitement and how great it is to travel to new places to run and to race, it's not all sunshines and rainbows along the way,
Hmm.
right? I think
Right.
anybody who has traveled for a race, you know, maybe these are things that you thought of, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to record this episode specifically with Stephanie, but like there are some logistical and some sort of practical things that are different than when you are at home and sleeping in your own bed and driving down the street to go to the race. So from your perspective, what would you say is the hardest part about traveling to a marathon?
The hardest part for me is packing. And
Okay.
it's funny because I was just talking with my father-in-law yesterday. He's a big biker, and he and my mother-in-law are about to go on a big bike trip. And he was just listening to a podcast about all the things you have to pack for a big bike trip. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for marathon. I mean, I've read so many horror stories of people who pack their things in a checked bag and then lose their luggage. So for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even check a bag because I've also lost my luggage. Just, it happens when you travel and you have connecting flights. So that means that you need to pack all of your things in a carry-on bag.
Mm-hmm.
And my bags are always like busting open because there's so many extra things that you have to take. Even for, I
Yep.
was in London for I think 6 days. And so you need your regular clothes for getting around town, but then you need to pack your gear, your
Mm-hmm.
sneakers, your, you know, um, I pack all of my carb loading snacks
Yes. Yes.
because I don't know like when I'm going to get to a grocery store, or how much things are going to cost, or if things are made with different ingredients. So I bring most of my snacks with me. And then my gels I pack in my liquid bag, which is only a certain size. And so that's typically like my gel bag or my liquid bag is busting with gels. And then it's like, oh yeah, and like maybe some lotion, so you have to be really
Yeah.
strategic about what you pack. Um, I typically only pack like a couple days worth of clothes, and then I bring you have like Tide packets that it's
Mm-hmm.
like to go laundry detergent, and I'll like do my laundry in the sink or the tub of the hotel room, which is something that I am just used to doing from like traveling in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
You just do tub laundry. Some people think that's kind of weird. But it just also saves room. But that's something that you have to think about is, you know, the race stuff is very important because
Mm-hmm.
if you lose your shoes, you have to buy shoes the day before your marathon. Like they're not
Yep.
broken in. That's a whole other challenge that you weren't ready for.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, or like they don't have your gels anywhere. So now you
Yep.
have to use new gels and you get stomach issues or something like that. So yeah, I think it's obviously like nicer coming back. You have all that stuff that you use for the race so you can, you have
Mm-hmm.
extra space to come home. But I find packing to be very challenging. The other thing too is just relying on transportation. I actually missed my flight to Paris when I ran the Paris Marathon because there were mechanical issues and weather issues on my flight from Rochester to Washington, D.C., where I was going to connect. And we left Rochester at the time I was supposed to leave, or I was supposed to arrive in D.C. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, so I'm gonna get there like right as the plane is leaving. And I did like, in Home Alone when they're running across the airport to try to catch their flight. I'm like
Yeah.
trying as fast as I can to get to my flight. I see it like pull out of the gate. I'm like, okay.
Uh,
Um, so at that point, like that's just something you don't have to worry about when your race starts like a mile down the road from your house.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and in that case, I was just like, okay, it is not this person's fault who's working at the ticketing gate, but I was just like, hi, just try to be as nice as you can. Just like, what are my options? And the best that they could do to get me to Europe that night was to fly me to Germany and
Mm.
then fly me from Munich to Paris the next day. So they're
Okay.
like, at least we can get you on the right side of the world. Um, but there's no other flights leaving for Paris tonight. So,
Yeah.
like that's just, yeah, another
Yeah.
thing that you have no control over and you just have to be ready for those things to happen. Or,
Yes.
um, yeah, like anytime that you're traveling, there's just so many things out of your control, and we try to control as much as we can. And I think as marathon runners, we can maybe be a little bit controlling. We try to be as controlling as we can of our circumstances, but you just have to be ready for things to not go as planned and then just like take a breath. um and just like, okay, now I'm in the right headspace to kind of figure out what my next plan is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then good thing that you have, like, again, if you're experiencing flight delays and travel changes and all that kind of stuff, like this is when you want those carb loading snacks in your
Yes.
carry-on, because now if you have an extra, like however many hours or an extra overnight or something like that sitting in an airport, well, it's a good thing you've got, what you need,
Hmm.
because, the airport prices for,
Yes.
some of that stuff, and, getting a
Oh
little
my
travel
gosh, yeah.
size bag of something for, I don't know, $10,
Yeah.
having that stuff on hand is definitely the better choice. So it's great to have, thought ahead to even the potential for there being travel delays and issues with that, especially when you're not flying direct, right? If you're flying
Mhm.
direct, fewer chances you're going to have an issue, but you never know.
Yeah, and I think even the sense of like planning when you're going to arrive, I know, it's nice to get there as close to the race as possible just so you don't have to like take time off or maybe,
Hmm.
like you want to have more time after the race when so you don't have to worry about, staying fresh for race day and just like do all your sightseeing afterwards. But that is something to keep in mind too, is, if you wait until the day before to fly and then it's like, oh, sorry, we actually can't get you there until tomorrow, like then you're rushing to go to the expo and you're just,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you're just not in the right headspace for race day. So I would
Exactly.
say also just, plan for maybe arriving 2 days ahead of
Yeah.
time so you have that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And especially planning around the expo hours as well. Like that, when we went to New York, we were delayed, but not tremendously. But we were a few hours later arriving than we were supposed to, which we actually got very fortunate that we were only delayed by a few hours.
Hmm.
um, some friends of the friend that I was traveling with were also going. And I think they were supposed to get there like the day before us, and they ended up getting there like the day after us or something. Like it was
Oh no.
nuts how delayed they were. And they
Wow.
were to the point that they were concerned they weren't going to make it to the expo before the expo closed. So they
Right.
were trying to figure out like how do we get our bibs and everything? Because of course for New York and for most of any even semi larger events, like there's no race morning pickup,
Hmm.
like so they ended up getting there in time. They were able to go get their stuff, but yeah, a bit of a mad dash. And even the best laid plans trying to get there 2 days ahead of time, sometimes almost
Right.
doesn't work out. So
Sure. Oh man, that's so
air
stressful.
travel is a wild ride.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you, with the traveling that you've done and the different events that you've done, how do you manage to keep the logistics and all of this stuff like as low stress or low pressure as possible? Like, what are some of the things that you intentionally do so that you aren't totally like rocked off course when something comes up, which it will, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I think part of it is just being prepared that, you can have these perfect plans and they're not going to
Yeah.
always go according to plan. And so having a backup. But some of it too is, I think the people that you go with make a huge difference in
Mm-hmm, hmm.
keeping things low stress and low pressure. I went to London with 5 people. It was my parents, my sister, my cousin, and my friend. And I told them all right away, like, hey, you guys need to be okay with me sometimes ducking out and doing my own thing because, like, I don't want to drag you all to the expo. I actually ended up going a little early so I could go to the expo with my friend before other people flew in. You need to be okay with me doing my own things Saturday so that I can be in like race mentality and,
Hmm.
race order. And you also need to be okay with me being, obviously on race day, like I'm not going to see you until probably afternoon or evening.
Yeah.
So people who, want to be attached to your hip the whole time, like there are times for trips like that. This is not the trip for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so having people who understand that and are fine doing their own thing, like that's great. My mom actually found this meme and it's Traveler 1 and Traveler 2. Traveler 1 is the person who has all the tickets, they made the itinerary, they're the person that navigates, and then Traveler
Yeah.
2 like is doesn't even know what city they're in. And obviously that's like an exaggeration, but it's nice to have a mix of people who are planners and people who are just happy to be there and along for the ride.
Yeah.
If you have too many planners, you're going to eventually have opposing ideas and you might butt heads about things,
Hmm.
and that's not fun. And then if you have too many traveler twos, everyone's just like, I don't know, what do you want to do? And then you never do anything. And
6 hours later, you have not gone
yeah,
for dinner yet.
right, right. And you're like, I haven't even seen like the neighborhood because we couldn't figure out if we wanted to go right or left.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so we had a really nice group and a good mix of that. And, I think for spectators on race day, you need at least one traveler one, because if they're all depending
Hmm.
on you and then you're like, okay, I'm off running this race, like, you need that other person who's going to push through the crowds. You're going to need the
Yeah.
person who like can navigate. And yeah, so being with the right people definitely gets rid of a lot of pressure and stress, because if you're on race morning being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like this person's mad at this person, and
Yeah.
I'm like so stressed about my
Yeah.
my group, like you can't think about your race.
Yeah.
So
Or like you said, and that's something that I wouldn't have thought of because I've not traveled with a group. Like I've only traveled with other people who are also running to
mhm,
races. I haven't traveled with spectators. But that's a great point that you bring up. Like, if you are the type A planner, logistics coordinator of the group, and you're going to do the run, and everyone else is sitting there being like, but what are we supposed to do? Where are we? Like, you can't also be in charge of making sure that they know where they need to be to
yeah.
spectate or what they're going to do and all of that. Like, yeah, you need to make sure that they are self-sufficient with where they need to be at what time and how you're going to meet up and some of that. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to be worried about that or stressing about that when that's not what you can think about when you're trying to get yourself to the start line, especially again of these huge events that it all comes down to that time coordination. It's not a
Mhm.
local race that you can just walk up 5 minutes before the gun goes off.
Right. I had to be there. My wave, I think, started at 11, and I had to leave my hotel at 9 to
Mm-hmm.
get there. Um, and I still didn't have like too much sitting around time, because I had to take
Yeah.
the train from the other side of the city. And yeah,
Yep.
so it's just like I had breakfast and I was like, I gotta go. Like, I hope you guys are good. But
Yeah.
I did sit down with my parents ahead of time and we looked at the map and kind of picked out some spots. But yeah, like it was very, like I felt very thankful that they were kind of able to be self-sufficient on
Mm-hmm.
race day. And I knew,
Yeah.
everybody knew each other, everybody was in good hands. Like there's not
Yeah.
going to be any fighting, there's not going to be any,
Yeah.
because I don't need to worry about, that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, definitely having a good crowd of people. The other thing too is like when I did Chicago, I also went with some friends and family, and I put so much pressure on myself that all these people spent time and money to come travel to Chicago to see me run this race. I have to run a really good race. Otherwise, it was a waste of everyone's time and money. And that is a
Mm-hmm.
horrible way
Yeah.
to think, because, I mean, yeah, you never know what could happen. Like somebody could throw a water bottle after the water station, you could trip on it and break your leg. And it's just like there's so many things that you can control, and then there's so many things you can't control. Like you cannot
Yep.
put that pressure on yourself. And everyone that went with me was like, I don't even know that all of them knew that a marathon is a standard distance. Like
Yes,
they're just
totally.
impressed that I
Totally.
got a medal. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, like having people like that with you, if you do bring spectators that are just like, I think you're awesome no matter what you do, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
happy to be on vacation away from
Yeah.
home,
Yes.
that's really nice. And then in terms of planning events, like other things to do, it was really important to me. If I'm traveling, I want to, like, yes, you'll experience the city while you're running, but I also want to do some things. So it feels like it was worth my time to come here, not just for the medal and the world major star, but just to get a sense of like what London's all about. And
Yep.
so we did a couple things. We went to a West End show. I saw Hercules, the musical.
Mm-hmm.
We did a Great British Bake Off experience after the race. It was something that, it's just like a couple hours on my feet, but not too exhausting. And we just did a couple things each day. Um, and I got a sense from people like, what do you really want to do while you're here? What do you not want to do? Everyone wanted to see Buckingham Palace. And so I was like, okay, like I know the course goes past Buckingham Palace. So why don't you guys do that on Saturday without me?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that time to just get in my little, marathon mode. And everyone wanted to have traditional English food. So I was like, okay, how about my post-race meal is at a pub that has
Yep.
traditional food? So we kind
Yep.
of got everybody's things they wanted to do while also making sure we had a lot of downtime and we did, like the double-decker bus tour so we could sit and still take in the sights. But yeah, not planning too much, but just planning enough that you feel like you get a sense of how the day or like how the city is. And I remember sitting at dinner with my family and, we are just having a good meal and laughing. And it's the night before the race. And I was like, I'm really glad that I focused on having a good time in like a good experience than
Yep.
being so caught up in having a good time, like a great race
Yeah.
pace that like if I had only been focused on that, I wouldn't have had any of these fun moments. I would have like sat in the hotel room the whole time and like you
Yep.
guys would be off doing your own thing. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad that I think it's a good balance of making those moments with your friends and family and then just being like, oh right, I have a race to do and like giving yourself time for that too. But if you
Yeah.
do too much of one, too much of the other, then that's where I think that pressure can get to you.
Yeah. And especially again, when you're traveling for an event, like when I have a client who has a very big goal for a PR or a certain time for an out of town race, that I mean, it's doable. It is possible. People set PRs when they travel for events all the time. Like, I'm not saying it's not a good thing to strive for, but I think that sometimes it is beneficial and even encouraged to like be very flexible with your expectations
Hmm.
for a race day performance in a new city. Like if you want to if you do have a specific goal for a specific race, that's totally okay. But you will have to maybe make some sacrifices along the way with things like how much time you're spending on your feet in the days before you get there, the places that you're eating, the new foods that you are not trying, the socializing that you're maybe not doing, that if you're kind of there to enjoy the whole experience in like a more well-rounded way, then yeah, it may not be your most incredible race performance, but at least traveling, you're taking in a new city, you're actually experiencing, going to see things. You're not just, yeah, like you said, sitting in the hotel room and just focusing only on the race.
Hmm.
So, like, I think it's very much okay to want the whole thing to be and not always be gunning for a PR every single time.
Yeah, and I think, with a lot of these majors, especially Chicago and London are the two that I've done, and those are the ones where people are like, "Oh my gosh, they're the fastest courses in the world and people break world records." And, uh, every year, basically, when I was in London, somebody broke two people ran under 2 hours in the marathon. And so
That's
you
still,
think like,
I'm never
I
going to get
know.
over that.
I
Never going to
know.
get over that.
Um And so, yeah, I mean, you think like, oh, it's going to be the fastest race for me too. But if
Yeah.
you're a middle of the pack runner like me, everybody is a middle of the pack runner. And so, yeah, you have to adjust for the crowds and yeah, maybe you're a little jet lagged or yeah, just all the things that come with traveling.
Yep.
Um, but I think that is another pressure that we put on ourselves is because other people had huge PRs here, I'm also going to have a huge PR. And, if you do want to be the person that sits in the hotel and just like, focuses on the race, like that's fine. That's just not what I wanted to do for my time.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, like whatever is going to have you feeling like you got a good time out of this, regardless of how your performance, if something comes up, like just whatever helps you feel like, I still got my time and my money was well spent here.
Yes, totally. Totally. And so we talked a little bit about the carb loading,
Hmm.
and I always, you know, yeah, for runners who are traveling for races for the first time, or maybe they've traveled for races before but have not carb loaded before, this is one of the things that I always really want to highlight is how do we fit in carb loading while traveling when there's travel days and changing continents and many, many time zones and like all of that. So tell us a little bit more about your carb loading strategy for London and like how it might be different than your typical carb loading plan,
Sure.
what you did differently, and then again some of the logistics, like you said, of packing things in your checked luggage so you have it with you and all that.
Yeah, so typically for marathon, I would do a 3-day carb load. And so for a Sunday race, you would start on Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Well, I was getting into London on Thursday in the middle of the day. And that meant, I mean, I don't know. So if you are not familiar with carb loading, it's a lot more food than you are normally eating. And so to try to fit in a full day's worth of extra food in half a day is just like I would just be nonstop eating. And
Mhm.
like I didn't even know how that was going to work. So I had asked you, do I start like what should I do? And you had actually recommended that I start carb loading on Wednesday, do the
Mhm.
best that I could on Thursday, and then carb load Friday, Saturday. And I will maybe leave this to you to explain just so I don't say it wrong. But the way, like, I'd asked, like, aren't you only supposed to do 3 days of carb loading? And you had said that basically it stores in your muscle, or like, yeah. Well, why don't you explain
Yeah.
why it's okay to carb load a day early? Sorry.
Yeah, so the reason that I recommend starting a day early for people who are traveling, if you're doing multi-day events where you're going to be like doing some running or even a lot of activity. Again, you're going to a walkable city where you're going to be, burning a lot of calories on your feet doing your sightseeing. Even if you're trying to keep it to a minimum, not go crazy with it, like, you're still getting at least 10, 15, or 20,000 steps just being in a very walkable type of city, right? So, because of that, starting the carb load a little bit early, you're giving yourself more of a chance of actually getting to the start line of that race with full muscle glycogen stores. So, your muscle glycogen is like your muscles are like a storage tank for glycogen. So, you can put in fuel and deposit fuel basically until you need it. So if you start a day early and you have, maybe you're 30% full, or so we don't have a way of like knowing. I wish we did. That'd make life a lot easier. If say you're 30% full on Wednesday and then you get to Thursday morning, that maybe you're down 10% from Wednesday to Thursday and then you start topping up from there. Like that's fine, right? Starting a little bit early just to fit in the logistics of your travel is very reasonable, especially if, say, you are traveling like maybe Thursday into Friday, and then you're only going to have like one day to carb load. Like for me, I would not recommend just a 1 day carb load for a full marathon. Like it's just not enough time to maximize that muscle glycogen. So giving yourself more of an opportunity to fill up those stores. And then too, like if your flight is delayed or if there's issues, or like if you did check a bag and it gets lost, whatever, you've got a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of flexibility. So it's not like, oh, now I can't carb load. And then that's another source of stress and pressure.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, but I figured the dietitian would be able to explain it better. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so you had kind of, reassured me that it was okay to start early. And to your second point, I mean, we got in at 11 a.m., but then the plane was taxiing for, 45 minutes, and then we had to go through, passport control, and then we had to immediately get on a train to go to the expo, and I'm not going to eat on like the underground,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think it was maybe 3 p.m. by the time we were kind of settled and ready to go to the expo. And at that point I was like, let me get a Pop-Tart out of my bag. But it was like, yeah, like I mean, I missed a whole morning and most of an afternoon trying to
Yeah.
carb load. And so trying to, and yeah, I mean, I think another thing that you recommended to me that was also a huge help is get most of your carb loading done through snacks and not relying on, because I was worried about like, man, do I have to go to like an Italian restaurant every night to make sure that I have like pasta? And you had
Yeah.
said, especially when you have a bunch of people, like people are going to be hungry at different times. Like maybe you don't sit down for a full meal and you're just eating on the go. And if you wait for the perfect sit down meal, like, it's just stressful. And one of the fun things about traveling is being able to try new things and being able to, you know, sorry, let me say that again. So yeah, one of the fun things about traveling is being able to try new things and go to fun restaurants and stuff. And so yeah, what I would do is I had all my packed snacks and I had like a crossbody bag that fit a bunch of them in. So as we were walking to things, I would just like take out some gummies and eat them or sit down at the on the bench and eat some crackers. And I told my family, I was like, I just need you to know I'm going to be eating a lot and like please do not like I don't want to make a big deal out of it. It's just something I have to do for the race and like
Hmm.
if you guys are not like don't make that central to what
Oh,
you
she's
guys
eating
do.
again.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I tried to not make a big deal about it other than like I am going to be pulling out snacks like as we're walking and I was also like brought hand sanitizer because you're touching all kinds of stuff
Yeah.
too. But yeah, just like make your own schedule. Don't wait for what other people want to do because also some people were just like, nah, I'm not really like feeling dinner, maybe just some snacks. And it's like, that's cool. I have to eat like 600 grams of carbs or whatever. So yeah, just like you have to be a little um confident in doing having your own system and
Yeah.
um I'd wake up and like eat some snacks and then in once everybody woke up, like then we'd go down to breakfast. But I had already eaten a
Yeah.
little bit before then.
Yeah.
So it's a little awkward, yeah, because I really don't like food being the main topic of conversation and obsessing over it and stuff. But for carb loading, you do have to be a bit dedicated to it to do it
Yes.
correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you need to do it, right? Like the only way
Hmm.
to get the carbs in is to consume them.
Yeah.
And so you need to have a strategy and a plan, but you also want it to be a strategy and a plan that isn't like, yeah, super intrusive
Hmm.
into you enjoying your time and your experience in a new city with a group. And yeah, so like Stephanie was saying, to focus on the snacks and getting more carbs in between meals, beverages. You've heard me say this on the podcast 10 million times at this point, but like drinking your carb calories during carb loading makes a huge difference. And then your meals and the restaurants you're choosing and that sort of thing can be a little bit more like flexible and just kind of make sense. Either, okay, what's in the area that we can just go to, or what is everyone feeling like, whether it is kind of local cuisine or some places that somebody really wants to try. And it's not just, okay, I have to go to an Italian restaurant 3 times a day, every day until the race and just eat pasta.
Right, because that's not fun for other people. And, my family kept saying, like, yeah, I mean, we're here for you. And like, yeah, but you also are on vacation. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to limit what other people can do while also not sacrificing my prep and wellness for the race. So
yeah,
there's definitely ways to get around that without making
exactly.
people feel weird or compromised.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's easy enough to just be walking around and like, one of my favorite carb loading kind of snacks for on the go is pretzels. So,
Hmm.
or crackers, like you said, or gummy candies or something like that. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not that strange to be walking around and like have a snack as you're walking around in
Yeah.
public. Like people eat, it's okay.
Yeah. And nobody knows you, so who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah. Um, so kind of same thing, and I think you sort of already answered this, just talking about being on the go with snacks and that sort of thing. What other preparation did you do, or what else went into planning those days leading up to being in a new city again, where it's very walkable, you're on your feet? Like, was there anything else logistics wise that you did with the couple of days before the race?
Yeah, so I definitely looked into public transportation just to make sure, if we did want to do something on the other side of the city, is there an easy way to get there without having to walk? Because normally I would be totally fine doing 25,000 steps on a vacation. Like part of
Yeah,
the fun, like I said, is walking around or running around and seeing these
yeah,
things. But yeah, public transportation. So we did the double-decker bus ride. We did the Uber boat where you can take the boat to different stops along the river. And so they're nice and relaxing and sightseeing, but you're also not walking around too
Mm-hmm.
much.
Yeah, that's
We
nice.
also happen to be in an area where we were very close to things, so we didn't have to walk too far to like see Big Ben. But even on, it was on Friday, we did end up walking a little bit long or more than expected. And all of a sudden I looked at my watch. I'm like, I'm at 18,000 steps. Um,
Oops.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like there were just times where I said, hey, like I'm gonna take a break for a minute. You guys go on and I'll just have my snack.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just even I think like you said, even when you're not intentionally trying to walk a lot, you will walk a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
finding those moments of rest and sitting down. And then when you get back, I have this little foot roller that I bring with me on vacation. And so I just would like sit and roll my feet out at night and
Mm-hmm.
do some extra stretching and just like wearing comfortable shoes. I do not ever bring like heels or fancy
Yeah.
shoes of any
Yeah.
kind. Like I don't do well in them anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like having the right things to wear. Yeah, I think just be cautious of, not doing too much, but also, after that Friday, I was like, okay, well, I'll just take Saturday morning. And when you guys go to Buckingham Palace, I'm going to sit at home. I'll do some stretching. I'll just kind of, get off my
Mm-hmm.
feet for a bit. Like you can always kind of take additional time afterwards to
Mm-hmm.
rest if you do have a day where you accidentally did a little too much.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like I don't know, it's again that balance of like having fun while also being ready for the race. Like if you're not in your absolute best shape, but you had a really fun time getting around London, like I don't know, there's a way to, mentally frame that. Like I still got a lot out of this vacation.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Um, so going into this race, you did have like an A goal and a time
Hmm.
goal going this. I know I was joking about the whole PR thing, but you did have a goal. But of course, these races are getting bigger and more crowded. And like it isn't always that easy to go out and run the race that you maybe were training for when
Hmm.
you're on a course with 60,000 people all running on it. And especially through some of these older cities that like we're not talking about a big wide, 4-lane highway that everybody's running down.
Right.
So what was your experience with, running, say, like London versus maybe Chicago? I don't know, if Chicago maybe there are some parts that are a little bit trickier to get through, and sort of navigating that and kind of adjusting that A goal as you went.
Yeah, so there were some parts of Chicago where I felt like, oh, like there's a big crowd coming up, but I mean, yeah, London was absolutely more congested.
Yeah.
We actually broke a world record for the number of finishers, and I do have a Guinness World Record certificate. So like, of course I'm gonna buy that. Like, when else am I ever gonna
Yeah.
have a record in my life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so my actual adjustments started before I left for London. We had discussed, I'm really on track to get this specific time, and it's a very popular pacer time. So I just thought like, I put my time in because it asks you when do you think you'll finish. And it was like, yeah, I'll just like be in the wave with the pacer and I'll just follow the pacer and I'll be good.
Yeah.
And then before I left, I was on the website just making sure I had everything, good to go. And at some point, I saw there was actually not a pacer for the time I wanted my wave. I was a wave back. So I was like, okay, well, there goes my, first like
Easy
win.
peasy
Yeah,
plan.
right. Like just follow that guy with the
Yeah.
sign. So like, okay. And then we met, one more time and we talked about, my race strategy a little bit more. So I went in with a race strategy, but I was already kind of like, okay, like that's not exactly what I was hoping for, but it'll be fine. And then it was also very warm that day. So like, okay, like I might need to slow down a little bit. And it helped that again in Chicago, I tried so hard to stay on pace and stay, despite weather, despite not feeling my best that day, and then like crashing and burning around like mile 15 and then just
Hmm.
kind of like limping my way to the finish line, which I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend. Um, So I already had that race where I put too much pressure on myself and, didn't make the adjustments I needed to be safe and smart. And then the other thing about London is that there's three different starting points, and then you all join maybe around like the 5K mark.
Mhm.
So at that point, you know, like you said, there's very narrow streets, and then all of a sudden, all these people are coming together, and it's people who are, there's a pacer for 3 hours slower than what I was hoping for, and then there's people who are, like don't have never run a race before, so they don't really know the etiquette of like where to be in the lane, and it's just like I think at that point I was like, I could try to run around all these people, but that's also a lot of energy, and I'm going to gas myself out trying to run around all these people. And
Mhm.
then I think the point where I really was like, I need to just be cool is I was behind someone that was like dressed as a dinosaur, and they're going slow because they're dressed in a dinosaur suit. And I
Yeah.
was kind of like, oh man, like this stinks. And then I saw one of the professional photographers, and I just thought about being caught on camera with a miserable look on my face behind someone dressed as a dinosaur. And like, I don't want to be that like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Like,
looking
who cares?
annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like, that person deserves to be there as much as I do, maybe even more, because like, I would never run in a costume. Like, I can't even run in normal
Yeah.
clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
Me,
like,
yeah, it never even crosses my mind to run in
no.
a costume. Like,
Yeah,
kudos to those people.
right. And like I saw that same dinosaur like at the end. I'm like, you know what? Like cool. Like he made
Yeah.
it and like
Yeah.
faster than me.
Yeah.
Um, but like I think at that point I was like, this is not like if I want to have the fastest race of my life, like do a local race where, like you said, you can sleep in your own bed. You don't have to worry about all the logistics and travel and stuff. Like that's not what this race is going to be. This is going to be the race that I ran with what felt like a billion people and
Everyone on the
so
planet.
yeah, everyone has a story. At the same time that someone broke 2 hours in the marathon, I think the slowest finisher finished in 12 hours,
Yeah.
and we saw them walking to dinner and like they were still going and the street cleaners like sweeping behind them, and
Yeah.
it's just like you think about just being a part of all the stories that happened that day, and it's like, you know what, like this is not the experience that I thought it was going to be, but this is also a very cool experience to be part of a group this big, all doing the same thing, like from
Yeah.
all over the world. Like, just have fun being in this place.
Yeah.
And then, it helped too that, right very soon after that, I happened to see my family in the crowd and I was like, okay, like, yeah, like this is like, who cares about my rate? Like, I'm not breaking any records today,
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
the record for being in the biggest group of finishers. But,
Yeah.
like, I'm not like, it's not that serious. And I'm
Yeah.
still going
Yeah.
to get a medal. I'm still going to get the star. I still ended up getting a PR. It was just not the one that I thought I was going to get. And so it's like, you can do all those things and have fun and, being able to relax a little bit, I think did help me enjoy it more.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, like then you see all the people walking around in their medals afterwards and you're like, yeah, like why was I so annoyed about this?
Yeah, yeah. And like your mental state matters so much. Like if you
Yeah.
can stay positive and have a good outlook and you can enjoy being out there, you
Hmm.
are going to have a better race and a better physical performance than if for a big chunk of it you're this stinks. All these people are in my way. Like
Hmm.
I feel like that mentality is just getting like so, it's so out there these days where people who are running some of these big world majors or just like these really big events are annoyed at everyone
Hmm.
else who's out on the race course. And it's like maybe these races like this are not the place to be, trying to go for your massive PR. Like just knowing that you're
Right.
sharing that road with 60,000 other people. Like as these races have gotten more popular and as marathon running has gotten popular, maybe there needs to be a little bit of a shift away from, you know, people also trying to make it their fastest time just because
Hmm.
everyone's trying to share the road.
Yeah, and I can also say like, okay, so I did get my PR, but even if I didn't, you know, at the end things did clear out a little bit and I was able to run like I was able to finish at my race pace, even though
Yeah.
I was not able to hit it for the majority of the race. But,
Yeah.
just being able to feel good at the end of the race, feeling good the next day, like I
Yeah.
had a very good physical recovery that I'd never had before. And I was just thinking, like, what if I had tried to push my way through the crowds the whole time and like, I don't know, there's other things to be proud of beyond just your time. And one of them
Yeah.
is like finishing without feeling like you're gonna collapse. Like
Yes.
that to
Yeah.
me was a huge accomplishment too.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, in this whole experience, you and I started working together way back in the fall.
Hmm.
So, lots of time to work together and to prepare and to do all of these things. What were the biggest lessons that you learned preparing for this marathon, like compared to your other marathon experiences?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson training wise, so so
Yeah.
fuel train recover.
Yeah.
So in terms of training, I think the biggest lessons were, take those slow runs, easy,
Hmm.
and trying different speeds out, actually working at marathon pace. Like those are things that I had never done before. Like I just found a plan online and was like, okay, I guess I do 12 miles today and just kind of went for it.
Yeah.
And actually being strategic about what I'm doing in those runs and feeling how different efforts feel. Like I had never
Hmm.
really been that in tune before. So I think those workouts are very helpful. In terms of fueling, I mean, I never knew how little I was eating in relation to what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was normal. Like you have a long run and you just sleep the rest of the day. Like my sister and I called it bathrobe o'clock. It's just like, all right, did my long run, bathrobe o'clock, like sleeping in my bathrobe all
Bro.
day. And like it's fun to do that sometimes, but it's not normal. And
Yeah.
we had, it was back in March. I did an 18-mile run and that night we had a birthday party for my sister. And I was like, oh, I probably won't make it that long because I ran 18 miles. I was out until 2. And like that is not something that I
Yeah.
normally have done during a marathon training. Like I didn't know you
Yeah.
could actually do fun things the same day as run. And like a lot of that has to do with just like eating the
Hmm.
right amount, eating the right types of things.
Yeah.
Um, my husband and I used to get sick like consistently from like December to April.
Hmm.
And this was the first year where we did not get sick at all. Maybe one day I had like a sniffle.
Yeah.
And a lot of that too was probably recovery as well as the fueling and just knowing how many things, because part of working with you was looking at what I was eating on a daily basis and kind of analyzing the nutrients and just realizing how much of micronutrients I did not have in my diet, even though I was a quote unquote like healthy eater.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not just like, yeah, there's a lot more to eating healthy than just not eating fast food, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
and then recovery, like, I mean, I think I learned the most that I didn't stretch enough. And all those times that I thought I was injured and couldn't run in the past, like a lot of it, when I explain those things to you, you're like, I think you're maybe just not stretching enough. Um, and so you started programming stretching into my workout so that I would actually do it. And I mean, that's maybe reductive of like what might have been happening in the past. But,
Yeah.
like, I mean, stretching just made such a big difference and getting enough sleep. And those are
Hmm.
things that I really just thought that marathon training stopped when you stopped the running for the day. And it
Hmm.
is just, there's so much outside of the actual running that makes you healthy and keeps you going. And I think that's the biggest lesson is just how running is just a very small piece of running,
Yeah,
if
and
that
and I
makes
think
sense.
that like it's such a wonderful thing to like have all of these pieces come together and sort of click and for you to
Hmm.
see the benefit and the outcome of big things like your running performances and your race time, but also not getting sick as often, not getting injured as often,
Yeah.
having energy, like all of the things that a proper fueling plan gives you. And it sometimes though can be a bit of a double-edged sword because like as great as it is that all these things come together, it can become a little all-encompassing. Like
Yes.
it sort of then takes over your life that it's like, okay, I'm going to do this run, but now I have to eat, and now I have to stretch and foam roll, and now I
Yeah.
have to like do all these other things around the running that like yes are ultimately really beneficial and support me, but are more like hours of the day. And it's just it's a balance. Like it's just kind of a thing that we have to understand and embrace for the time that we're marathon training. And then this is why we periodize and we are not always in a marathon training cycle.
Right. Yeah. And I will say, I think at first, like the meal planning, I mean, I would sit there for hours just looking at the app that you gave me, and you can put
Yeah.
in meals and stuff and just trying to figure out. But once I got the hang of it, we had our like my husband called it like our weekly menu, and we just
Yeah.
kind of knew like, okay, like now I kind of understand how I have to balance things and get the macros and stuff. And so it does, yeah, the more you do it, the more it kind of becomes natural. But there is
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely a learning curve, and yeah, you can definitely let it consume your life. But I think, one thing that we talked about around the holidays was it's okay to have, Thanksgiving or Christmas, like you can have a day where you eat like candy and
Yeah. Of
pies
course.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to, I think that's another lesson too, is like knowing how to balance things because, especially growing up in the 90s where it's like, well, carbs are bad and then fat is bad and then this is bad and that's bad.
Yeah.
It's like that's not like balance of everything is good
Hmm.
and it doesn't have to rule your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So learned a lot about nutrition. And one of the things that we did was a genetic test with my personal nutrition genes and things that I'm more
Hmm.
prone to or things that I have excess of. And that was also really helpful. Just because there is so much information out there, and you can absolutely read an article about nutrition, be like, oh, okay, like, cool, I guess I'll do that. But then if you don't know what your personal body needs, like maybe that advice doesn't work for you. Maybe it's even
Hmm.
bad for you. So
Yeah.
just figuring out what worked for me personally
Yeah.
was also really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So for people who maybe are running either a world major this year, there's still a couple left for 2026, or maybe already know that they're going to be running London next year, hoping to get into London for next year. I can't remember if that lottery has already been done or not. Why do I feel like it has?
I think it
For next
has,
year
yeah.
already. Yeah. Anyway, for people who are going to be running London or another world major, any tips or advice for that race?
Yes. So I went with a tour group, and the you could choose a hotel, and I chose a hotel that was listed as 15 minutes from the finish line. But what I didn't know was that the way to get out of the marathon is very restrictive.
Okay.
So there's only a couple ways that you can get out. There's very long lines, and it actually ended up taking me 2.5 hours to get home after the race. So I would just, if you are planning to stay near the finish line, I would say stay, like, look at where the finish line is, and you're in like this park. I would say maybe north of the park because it is very difficult to find a place to cross over the marathon route. So if my hotel was down Westminster Bridge, and you would have to cross the route to get to the bridge, and like there was just no way I was going to do it. I had to end up walking like
Oh,
the
okay.
other side of the city down another bridge and then around. And so like just be for any major, I mean, I guess just be really thoughtful about how you're going to get back to your hotel or wherever you're going to change and shower.
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't know if New York was like this, but with the London Marathon at the end, we got a Lucozade, which is like a very sweet Gatorade, and a yogurt drink, and that was really the only food that we got. So I would recommend if you have a bag that you're checking, put some food in there because
Hmm.
hopefully it wouldn't take you 2.5 hours to get home. But just in case it does, like, I mean, I was shaking by the time I got back to my
Yeah, yeah.
hotel. I was like, I just need to eat something.
Yes.
So have some food perhaps ready. I had also asked my parents if they had any spectator tips because that was something that,
Mm-hmm.
was difficult for us to like it will say, don't go here because there's a lot of people or go here. But in terms of like actually getting around, they tried to see me a couple times and they got to see me twice and they recommended, you know, one time towards the beginning, one time towards the end. Like if there are a couple spots where the marathon, it's like mile 14, mile 22, they go in opposite directions, but they say like you could see your runner twice, but there's not really a good way to cross over
Mm.
the path for spectators.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're kind of just plan to be on one side of the course.
Oh,
They
okay.
um they took the boat as their transportation and they were not able to get over to take the train. So
Oh,
just
okay.
be
Because they
aware
would have
that
had to cross the race course.
yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they did end up seeing me at I think mile 6 and mile 18. And they said the GPS, like when you're using the tracking app, like it is an estimate. It had
Hmm.
actually shown that I was already past that point and they're like, "Oh, I guess we missed her." And then my friend saw me. So it was not totally accurate. And
Yeah.
then just yeah, have a plan for meeting up after
Yeah.
because self-service can be very tricky. Yeah, no, I think that's it. So just,
Yeah.
booking the hotel kind of close to finish line, but not somewhere where you would have to pass over the course
Yeah.
and having some food with you and then just spectators just being realistic about where you might be able to run into each other.
Yeah, I feel like the post race, that was my biggest mistake in New York was I did not give a single thought to like what happens after we're done. And, by that, like, especially in November, like by the time you like shuffle out of there, again, like a long line to get out, you kind of stop for a few photos, like it's cooling off, it's dark, like
Hmm.
it's different than running a spring race where you've got lots of like daylight and warmth and all of that. So you get your little
Right.
poncho thing, but like, and then you're shot out onto the street and you're like, well, now what?
Right.
If I like my biggest thing is just and you're not thinking, right? Like your brain is not working when you've just
Right.
finished running a marathon. So like you're not really in a position to be making decisions.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, figuring out your post race plan and having that locked in is definitely something that I would do differently if I ever do another world major.
Yeah, and like it's just there's so many people, everyone's trying to get out, everyone is trying to get home in these two ways that you're able to be
Yeah.
funneled. And so, yeah, just be patient. Maybe bring a phone charger with you because my phone was at 1% and my family was like, "Where are you?" And like, I need you
Hmm.
guys to stop. Like, I know we need to coordinate, but I also need you to stop
Yeah.
texting me because my phone's about to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we did make it home. We did have a nice meal, but yeah, it was a little chaotic. I felt like I did another marathon just trying to get home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very fun course. The crowds are very fun. And yeah, like it starts in a field outside of the city a little bit.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so I would actually, another recommendation that I had was to bring some throwaway clothes. At the very
Hmm.
least, you can sit on your clothes because it might be wet grass.
Yep.
And yeah, but it's nice because you get to see a little bit more of the residential side of London before you get into the city.
Okay.
But yeah, I had a really good time, and I think even if it was not a world major, I think it would be a fun course for anybody to do. And London's a
Yeah.
very fun city, and they were really happy to have people there for the race, like we were saying,
Yeah.
like they take a lot of pride in it. So, definitely one that I hope people get a chance to do.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. All right. So, where can people find you and connect with you if they have questions about London that they want to ask? Yeah, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so my account on Instagram is StephH989. I'm happy to answer questions if people have them, either about Chicago or Paris or London or just travel in general.
Yeah.
I'm not super active on social media, but I'm happy to respond when I see your message.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you
Yeah,
taking the
thank you.
time today to share about your experience and all of your tips and wisdom. I know that that's something that is always really valuable, logistics of traveling and being in a new city and all of that stuff. So I appreciate you coming out and giving us all of your thoughts today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that is it for this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast, and we will see you back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.